Good morning again, and welcome to another episode of Two Old Bucks. We're here on a fine Saturday morning. I'm Dave, and
I'm
with
Dale.
me is...
I'm Dale.
You're still Dale. All right. So we've got some new things ready for you today. We're going to talk about a mysterious town in Washington called Lake Stevens. And then Dale is going to have some comic culture for us. And I may do a movie review if we have time. And we're going to remember some people that are no longer with us. We're not going to be morbid. And do letters from afar. And, of course, then Dale will close out with Loser Lotto, which nobody seems to understand. But
final closeout of Loser Lotto.
The final closeout. Wow. Okay. So after that, I'm going to do a little pitch about a Zoom episode that we did as an experiment. You'll be hearing that after. That'll be the episode after this episode. It's a work in progress.
The baby Zoomers.
The baby Zoomers. So it won't be up to our usual standards, but we hope you'll enjoy it anyway.
Hey, Dave, as an introduction, we want to welcome all the listeners and thank you all for the feedback. We appreciate the letters that you've taken the time to write. And just to reiterate that it's these Two Old Bucks is a celebration of a long friendship, and I'm sure we're not unique by any means. And it's great to have a good friend during these COVID times and some of the other issues that are going on. So anyhow, it's good to be good with me and Mike.
It's good to be us.
Good to be us.
It's good to be us. Okay. So, moving along to our first segment, things that make you want to say, I get statistics on all our episodes. Tells me how many people have downloaded and where they're from. So we get a breakdown by country and by city within country. I was puzzled by why we're getting so many hits from a town called Lake Stevens, Washington. Lake Stevens, Washington. No idea what is going on in Lake Stevens.
What do you mean by that, Dave? Like they signed in to listen to us or something?
Well, they downloaded episodes. Yeah.
Oh, they downloaded.
Yeah. So it was just a bizarre number, and so I'm scratching my head, thinking, "Oh boy,
we don't know anybody.
We don't know anybody."
Yeah.
And nobody has written in from Lake Stevens, Washington. Anyway, so I get a weekly newsletter from the hosting company, Buzzsprout. Great company, by the way. That's a free ad, Buzzsprout. You don't have to pay me for that. And one of the tags on the newsletter was, "What's going on in Lake Stevens, Washington?" So apparently, I'm not the only one that's seeing hits from Lake Stevens, Washington. Now, Buzzsprout has its own podcast. I think it's called Buzzcast. Anyway, it's two guys, much like us, only much younger. And they took on the issue of Lake Stevens, Washington, and trying to figure it out. In the end, they didn't conclusively, but they had two ideas. Now, the one guy, we'll call him Dale. Well, he's like Dale. He thought it was a conspiracy theory. And it was some mysterious government conspiracy that
was downloading all these podcasts from everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, now the other fella was a little more scientific about it. So he dug into Lake Stevens, Washington. I did too. It's 30,000 people. It's a pretty town up there. And his theory was Lake Stevens has data centers, like for Amazon and all these big guys. Okay,
there you go.
One of the things that data centers do is give IP addresses to internet service providers like Comcast and Spectrum, whomever.
Okay.
So they get a handful of IP addresses, which are initially set to Lake Stevens, and then when they give a router to a customer, then they're supposed to change the IP address. Now his theory is they forgot to change the IP addresses, or there was a lag in changing IP addresses for a bunch that they sent out. hundreds, maybe thousands.
So to picture this, I mean, in my mind, I'm picturing an organized group of people in the building that sort of scour these things and click on stuff and check it, and add that to some data base somewhere to give to somebody else who makes use of that. Is that about what it amounts
well,
to?
basically, if Comcast wants to give you a router, they get an IP address from Lake Stevens or somewhere.
Okay.
And then they assign it to Dell when they put the router in your house.
Right, there you go.
Now, if they forget to change the location to where you live to your town in Florida, and it shows up. Now, there are still real downloads. It's just they're really not coming from
If I lived in Florida.
If you lived in Florida, yeah. Well, I know you're still in the witness protection program, so we won't go there.
Hey,
But so that's a little bit of trivia. They didn't say definitively that this was the answer, but it sounded like a good explanation.
I'll tell you an interesting thing. One time I switched phones, got a different number, and for the longest time it was listed under somebody else's name. Every time it came up on the phone ID, I said, well, why don't you change that? And the phone people said to me, he said, we don't actually do that. We assign the number, and there was an organization that sort of kept track of whose name was associated with that number, and it took a long time before it appeared under my phone ID, which was registered with the carrier. So there's a group of people out there monitoring this stuff all the time, I guess. So
anyway,
I believe it.
So that's my little communications trivia here. So hats off to Lake Stevens, Washington.
All the people in Lake Stevens, Washington, as we greet you. Keep downloading our podcast, and
we have no listeners in Lake Stevens, but they're somewhere. We just don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So all right. So that's a little bit of tech trivia here.
So you ready for this?
Let's move along to Dale's section. Dale wants to talk about comics. He wants to call it Comic Culture. He's still afraid that Boy George is going to get after us if we call it Culture Club.
No, but there is a culture of comics. And let me begin.
Tell me about it.
All right, let me begin this way. I was a fan of National Lampoon when it was fashionable. And I eventually became a fan of the comics in the New Yorker, which were pretty sophisticated. It took me a while to even understand some of those. However, in between was the Far Side.
Oh, Far Side, all-time favorite.
Well, okay, so you agree that you found that to be humorous.
That was great.
I thought he was absolutely incredible to think of these concepts and then illustrate them in one frame. But this is what surprised me. One time, I had a Far Side tearaway calendar, which is like
I had one too. I had one at work. Yeah,
right.
Far Side. So
you know
day.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There, a little tearaway calendar.
Kind of a little sanity check for work. Yeah.
And I was looking at a cartoon that showed two cheetahs. People may remember this one. There were two cheetahs sitting on the rock, or one cheetah was sitting on the rock, another cheetah was standing next to him. The cheetah sitting on the rock had his leg crossed and was tying on a tennis shoe. He had a tennis shoe on one foot, and he was tying the other paw with a tennis shoe. Okay, so if you can picture that, and
tiger paws.
Right.
Tiger.
This is two cheetahs sitting on a rock. One's tying on a tennis shoe.
I got it.
And behind them, in the distance, are some springbucks or gazelle. And on the rump of the backside, the rump area of the gazelle, are the words, this is a symbol that says turbo. Okay. So the gazelle have a little sign on their rump that says turbo, and one cheetah
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it.
One cheetah is saying to the other cheetah, he says, "Forget it. You're never going to catch those guys." I roared myself in laughter. But the reason I'm telling you this story is I happened to be in a place where cheetahs roamed wild.
You lived there.
Yes.
You want to tell us anything about that?
Yeah, these were animals that you could theoretically go and see. I mean, you run across one. So I took this catalog or this cartoon, and I started walking around to the people who lived in the country where the cheetahs were native. The gazelles were, actually you could run into them too. So these creatures actually were right there in this country. And I said to these people, I said, "Look at this." I said, don't you find this to be funny? This tennis shoes, and he's going to chase this cheetah, but it says turbo, turbo powered and all that stuff. And each one said, "No. No." So I said to myself, this whole comic thing, the whole culture of comics,
there's some culture,
very cultural,
yeah.
Sense of humor. So then I've always been fascinated with this, which brings me to my present day. And the reason I'm mentioning this to you, because my local newspaper has 21 comic strips. And if with so many, you would think, well, what's the purpose? I think it's trying to appeal to a broad audience, because only 3 or 4 of them I find interesting or even funny. And I mentioned it to you. You said you only found maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, there's a couple that I like. Most of them are just leave me flat.
So this is not the single frame comics that appear in the New Yorker, or I'm not talking about political comics or anything like that. Not that kind of these are 1 to 3 panel comics that appear daily in a newspaper. And I marveled. I said, I wonder if I only like 3, there must be somebody that likes these other ones. So we're all different on this. And how do the minds of these men who build these must work to come up with, I'm thinking, 1 out of every 4 is sometime hilarious.
I find so many of them just stupid. I mean, they're not funny.
You don't find them at all? Like for example, I'm looking at, I'll give you some example.
All right, give me an example.
There's Zitz.
What's going on with Zitz?
Zitz is about a teenage boy and his growing up. Baby Blues is about some young children in a family.
Now you're recommending these?
No, I'm just saying that these all represent. In fact, the one I just recently got interested in is Pearls Before Swine.
Okay, now that one I can go for once in a while. Yeah,
a lot of puns and funny stuff there. Yeah. There's a single frame called Bliss. I thought that's very sophisticated. It's always a dog and a squirrel or something.
I can do Bliss once in a while. I'm basically a Dilbert guy.
The Dilbert, of course, is there.
I mean, I like Doonesbury, but I can never tell whether it's a modern day panel
I can never
or it's
figure
one
that
from
one
1989.
That's kind of sophisticated too. You probably have to be a real fan of that.
You really have to know the characters,
Yeah.
or it doesn't make sense.
There's BC, which always used to be pretty funny. There's Shoe. There's High and Lois. There's Garfield. And even the old, I found myself reading the old episodes of Peanuts. Now, obviously, that hasn't been, Schultz died a long, long time ago. But very, very topical. Still very, very interesting. Anyhow, going no further with this, all I know is that I find it very interesting, and the people who watch this are amused by this. I just think how clever these men must be to produce that, and how different we are when it comes to humor. So that's my cartoon culture humor.
You're sticking with it. Huh?
And I also believe that Wile E. Coyote was a real person for the longest time.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, before we close this out now, do you have an all-time favorite? Other than Far Side's got to be.
Far Side, there was so many on Far Side
favorite.
that Well, you could pose that to the listeners. Is there something that sticks in your mind so well that you could just, if you say, quickly, give me the funniest cartoon you ever saw.
And do you know how they could tell us that?
They could write to us and tell us what their favorite cartoon. Yeah.
And you know where they could write to?
No, you tell me.
Okay, it's BUCKSTWOOLD@gmail.com.
BUCKSTWOOLD@gmail.com.
BUCKSTWOOLD@gmail.
Off the top of my head is another Larson cartoon where there are two bears. To this day, there are two bears that are you might remember this, that are in the telescope of a hunting rifle. They're in the crosshairs.
The bears, yeah.
And the one's got the crosshairs on him, and he's sitting there smiling and pointing to the other bear.
Yeah.
I thought Larson was a genius. So
the one I always remembered, there were two dogs outside their dog boxes, and in the distance you can see these mushroom clouds, and one dog looks at the other. He says, "Well, this is the end of life on Earth as we know it." He said, "On the bright side, there'll be no more rollover rover and any of that crap."
So that's the one you remember.
That's the one I remember.
Oh, okay. Obviously, humor is very, 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 very individual. So
all right.
All the best to you humorists out there, and that's my story with humorists. Tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, I want to squeeze in a movie review here.
Okay.
I'm going to call this a 3-minute movie review. So if it takes over 3 minutes, just yank me. The other day it was drizzling, and I was surfing Netflix. I was looking for Midnight Run, which was that old comedy, Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin. And somehow, you go down the rabbit hole, and I found this 2014 documentary. It's called The Battered Bastards of Baseball. And it's about Bing Russell and the Portland Mavericks. Do you know Bing Russell?
I don't know, but
you do, but you don't know that you know him. That's the thing. I'm gonna show you how you know him. Okay. Well, Bing grew up in St. Pete, just up the road here.
If you lived in Florida.
If you lived in Florida, which we don't. Okay. So anyway, he loved, like every boy, just about every boy. He loved play baseball. He really loved the game. And Yankee spring training camp was in St. Pete. And when he was 9 years old, he met Lefty Gomez, pitcher for the Yankees. Bing's dad ran a airplane service at the airport. So anyway, Bing kind of became the unofficial mascot of the Yankees. And so he grew up, again, playing baseball, loving baseball. And after college, he decided he wanted to go to Hollywood and just act in movies. And people said, "You're crazy. Nobody just says I'm going to do that," and they do it. But he did. And so in the 50s and the 60s particularly, he had a huge number of roles. Now, you may remember him as the deputy sheriff Clem Foster in Bonanza. That was his longest role. I think that was 13 years he played. He said he was killed in Westerns 146 times. So he was the guy that the hero always shot.
So you're telling me about the person who made the movie now, not...
Well, it's about him. He is no longer with us, okay? So he had a good life. He was always kind of the second banana. He had a couple short starring roles. But along the way, again, this love for baseball, he made baseball instructional videos. These were professional quality. Now, major league teams would buy these videos. And,
how to play baseball.
How to play baseball. And, the couple that they showed in the movie, it's the, how to get a ground ball to your right, how to get a ground ball to your left, and how to set up for the throw to first base and that sort of thing.
I always thought that came naturally.
Well, maybe to you. The rest of us had to work. You were the star. I was the scrub. Okay.
I played 3 positions. You only played 1.
I only played 1. Yeah, we've already had the discussion. So the videos, he had a young boy, well, kind of teenage boy, was the infielder in his videos, and he used his son Kurt. You're not.
No, I'm still trying to figure out.
Okay, Kurt Russell.
Oh, Kurt Russell.
Bing Russell who was played in all these westerns, is the father to Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell's movie debut was picking up ground balls and throwing them to first.
And friend, but just let everybody know out there, we don't rehearse this beforehand. He's telling me this the first time I've ever heard this.
Yeah,
just like you.
Now that alone, that would be an interesting story, I think.
Yeah.
But the real story was just starting. Again, the Portland up north of there had a AAA farm team called the Portland Beavers, and they had lousy attendance, and the team packed up and went to Tacoma, a smaller town. Okay, thought maybe it'd be easier to, I don't know, but Portland was not a baseball town. So he decided he wanted to have a baseball team. He wanted to fill that hole, fill that void in Portland, and he paid I think $50 for it.
This is not a farm club. This is like a AAA team.
Well, he made a single A team.
Okay.
He created a single A team for your non-baseballs. That folks, that's the lowest. Those are
the levels.
Those are the guys coming up and going down. AAA is the highest. So he had open tryouts. He expected 30 or 40 guys to show up. He had 300 and some guys showed up. Now these were there were over the hill guys. Some guys that were just never quite good enough. Guys who wanted one more chance.
What was the time period? What year? About what year?
This was in actually he had the team 73 to 78.
Okay.
And so he got no stars, but lots of grit. The team, since they didn't have any stars, they took a lot of risks. They did a lot of base stealing. They had a lot of bunts and ways to move.
So they played some pretty outrageous, risky baseball.
They played risky baseball, but guess what?
They won.
They had a winner. they had a great record. The Mavericks, it was a great name for them because they were very flamboyant off the field as well as on the field. They did a lot of antics, sweeping the dugouts out. The attendance just went through the roof. Okay, within a couple years, they had the highest attendance in the minor leagues, I believe.
To see them play this way.
And they were winning. It's not like they were. Bing gave them one bit of advice. He said, "Go out there and have fun, guys."
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I laughed out loud a couple times, and I actually teared up a couple times. It was such a great story. They were the only independent team in baseball at the time. Every other minor league team had been gobbled up by a major league team and were part of the farm system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was independent, and the rest of them hated him because he didn't play by the rules. He did this flamboyant stuff. He was beating their syndicate teams. So it was a great story.
How long did that last? I mean, how long was his success?
Well, exactly. It was 73 to 78. He sold the team in 78.
And he was successul.
He sold the
5 of those
franchise.
years, or
I think they had. I don't know what his overall winning record was, but he had. I think one year they had like a 670 one-loss average, which was the highest one-loss average of any team in the minors or majors. So it was pretty impressive. Jim Bouton came out of retirement to pitch for them, and he fit right in. This is the guy that wrote Ball 4, probably one of the favorite all-time baseball stories. He was a Maverick. He just fit right in. His Ball 4 was a bit of an expose. He told all the stuff that was supposed to stay with him anyway. So it's just a sweet story. I thought it was very nicely done. It'll make you love baseball, I think, if you watch it, or at least Bing.
So you, with an understanding of baseball, you ran across a baseball documentary that was absolutely fascinating. It sounds almost like you wish the game was a little bit faster today, and maybe not so regimented or something, that some of that or regular folks could go out and try out for a team, because I tell you, it's not easy to make a professional baseball team.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my story, The Battered Bastards.
So it was a good movie. A
It was a documentary. It was, maybe, I don't know, hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. Nice movie for a rainy day. I'd like to move on to remembrances.
And all those people listening are saying, there you go.
There you go. And if I look at the clock on the wall, I'm probably not going to get all these covered, so I'm just going to do the first two, and I'm going to save the best one for the next time. So these are two people we lost on the same day, December 7th. The first one I want to talk about is Chuck Yeager. You remember Chuck Yeager?
I do know. Who doesn't know Chuck Yeager?
First person to break the sound barrier, did it in 1947. He was 24 years old. He just died at age 97. Probably the greatest test pilot ever. Broke the sound barrier in I think it was a Bell X1.
Yep.
When I was a kid, I just used to sop that stuff up. He was one of my heroes. He really was.
He was a hero. He was a hero. And I'll tell you why he was a hero. To me, because he achieved the ability to fly, which is a dream of mine. And I have flown, but he managed to achieve a lifetime dream, and I would think he had to be almost fearless to get into some of the stuff that they asked him to fly. So I admired him.
He was kind of fearless, but he wasn't crazy. He wasn't a cowboy, and he tried to point that out several times. He was in Tom Wolfe's book, The Right Stuff. He was one of the featured characters in that. And then he wrote an autobiography called Yeager, and that was in 1985. I've read both of those books back then, and I really enjoyed them. Just want to throw out a couple quotes from his book. Number one, he says, "You don't concentrate on risks. You concentrate on results. No risk is too great to prevent a necessary job from being done." So there you go. Yeah. And this one...
30,000 feet at Mach 1.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, he always felt he was in control of the situation.
He was a World War II pilot, too.
He was a World War II pilot. He had, 13,
near the end of the war
13 or 15 aces to his credit. Yeah. I think he was a brigadier general when he retired, something like that.
He would have been how old in World War II? Maybe 20?
You're asking me to do math here on the run.
No, but just think about that.
He was
that young.
He was 24. He was 24 when he broke the sound barrier, so he was younger than that in World War II. Yeah.
He could have been 18.
He was 24 and 47. So there you go. He was probably a teenager when he was started flying airplanes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. This is the second quote. "Living to a ripe old age is not an end in itself. The trick is to enjoy the years remaining."
There you go.
How can you argue
with
that?
Like a couple of 2 old bucks, huh?
Yeah, something like that. Now, on the same day, we lost Dick Allen. Dick was he was a big bat for the Phillies and the White Sox, and played in several other teams, but primarily the Phillies and White Sox.
But tell me why I should know him. I don't remember Dick Allen.
Okay, well, you may not remember. You should remember him if you were following baseball. But before he was Dick Allen, he was Richie Allen. All right, so turn your brain back to 1960. Our high school basketball team. Now we were kids. We were in junior high at that point. Won our section, ended up in the state basketball playoffs. We got matched up against Wampum. Do you remember Wampum High?
I remember Wampum. I didn't even think it was a real place.
It was a real place.
But they had some real basketball players.
Well, they
there.
had the Allen brothers. They had Richie and Ron.
Yes.
And Richie at the time, I remember he was 5'10", and in warm-ups he dunked the ball. Okay, he and his brother Ron destroyed our team, and they went on to become the state champs that year. They were just spectacular. Yeah. And then he changed his name to Dick. He went from Richie to Dick, I guess, when he grew up. But had a great career, great statistics. 30 or more home runs, 6 seasons, a .292 average, 350 home runs, and he had some other great statistics.
Not a Hall of Famer?
Still waiting to get into the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he was playing during a controversial time. And
So 2 old bucks are advocating to have someone to look into that, maybe.
if I could do anything to get him into the Hall of Fame, even
There you
after
go.
he's gone, it'd be great. It was funny. He didn't like the designated hitter at all, and he hated playing on artificial turf. So here's a quote I like. He says, "If a horse can't eat it, I don't want to play on it." So he was 78. He died in his hometown of Wampum, Pennsylvania.
And this would have been the grass infield artificial turf.
Yeah,
I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. I never like to play on that either. 'Cause,
Okay, I was going to top this off with a little discussion on my favorite teacher, Miss Neff, but I'm going to have to
you want to
save
hold that?
I'm going to save that for the next one here. We're
You ready for my apology?
well, I'd like to touch on a couple letters from afar first.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not sure what your apology is, but
Well, you'll see when you get to it.
okay, yeah. Let's keep it real here. Well, let me go to a couple. Now, we did get one fella asked, how big was the hole? How big was the hole that the cable company dug? He asked me, he said, was it
I can clarify
2 inches
that.
deep or 3 yards wide?
It was 3 by 3.
3 by 3
Yeah,
feet.
3 foot
Okay.
by 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot.
All right. So there we go. That answers that question. I
Yeah.
don't think that was a good enough question to warrant induction into the Society for Cats Running and Playing.
Society
or
of
yeah.
what is it? Citizens representing alternative positions.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. All right. I got a couple letters from afar here. One is from Mike from Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. And here he says, dudes. I like it when you start that way. Dudes. I'm listening now and enjoying it. Reminds me of O'Brien and Gary. For you if you're not old and from Pittsburgh, that was a radio show many years ago. 2 guys, much like us, only much more polished and funnier.
So there's a real possibility that there were 2 guys doing a radio show before this. Huh?
Before this, yeah. All right, let me finish what he's saying here. He says, both of you have good voices and are interesting so far.
Thank you very much.
Now, this is where it really gets interesting. Playing you on Spotify while in the shower. While in the shower. He's listening to us while he's in the shower. 5 stars for the 2 old bucks.
If I didn't care,
yeah.
would I feel this way?
I mean, listening to us in the shower. He's in the shower. He's listening to us, and he's writing this email. It's spectacular.
Well, I hope he got to finish the whole episode. Anyhow.
And he's
He's
not done. He says, P.S. I'll try not to spit on my food any longer. Everybody tells me I do that. So, okay.
Wear your mask.
Public service.
That's right. Wear
public
your mask.
Service. He goes on. P.P.S. says, I don't understand Loser Lotto.
All right, Stan. I hope he's tuning in because I'm gonna clarify that at the very end of the program and make it short.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I don't know, Mike. I don't know who does understand Loser Lotto.
No, apparently nobody.
But I think you're in the society. I think
okay.
We got 2 thumbs up for Mike from Gibsonia.
Okay, Mike, you're
All
a
right.
citizen
Good
representing
job,
an
Mike.
alternative position.
Welcome. All right, we got another letter from a floor. This is Claire from Chicago. It's really a nice letter. It's like almost too nice to be about us.
You know, I'm just a guest on this program. I haven't heard these before.
I know. You're going to hear it. She says, hi, Bucks. I listened to your first podcast with a smile on my face as I sipped my morning tea. I like you. I'm fortunate to have 2 friends, and like you, I'm fortunate to have 2 friends I've known since junior high. We don't get to see each other as much as we'd like. However, we make an effort to keep our friendships thriving. Dell's statement from a passage in a book, quote, this was the last person who knew me as a boy, really hit home with me. Like a bolt of lightning, it made me realize that my friends Scarlett and Nancy are my only friends who knew me as a girl and how lucky I am to still have them in my life. And she goes on about how much they mean to her and vice versa. And then she says, moving on to handshakes and hugging, I have to say I believe it's a toss-up between which is worse, the macho handshake or the limp grip, which always conveyed to me that the person was not really happy to meet me. Hugging, I totally miss hugging. I'll admit that I'm a habitual hugger and a handshaker. Perhaps all those years in business, meeting and greeting. Anyway, I come from a long line of huggers. And then she's got a P.S. She says, P.S. I don't know why they do the P.S. They should just, anyway. She says, I have to go to the grocery store to get the lottery form so I can figure out what in the world Dell is talking about in Loser Lotto.
Oh, my soul.
There's a, this is
you got to have you need a ticket to actually really relate to that, I suppose.
So, that's Loser. What are we going to do? What's next? Loser Lotto.
Loser Lotto's next. And thank you for that letter. And for anybody who, that was, like I said, it was a very touching statement. The person who knew you as a boy or knew you as when you were young.
The last person.
I think when that person is gone and you're alone, all the other people aren't quite the same. So anyhow, keep your friendships out there. Keep them strong, folks. Say hello to those folks while you can. Can't talk about them. You can talk about them when they're gone, but you can talk with them while they're here now. So there's our message. So you
more good advice.
You want to throw that over to Loser?
Let's go to Loser Lotto.
Okay, Loser Lotto. I apologize to all the listeners who, never played the Lotto, and B, can't quite visualize what I was trying to get at. But it amounted to one day I experimented with filling the little numbers in, and it turned out to look like a letter. And I figured you could spell a little word with that. So Lotto was easy to spell with the numbers. However, I apologize for the confusion, and I apologize for all the people who have played the Lotto and tried this method, because we haven't gotten any response about any winners. So clearly,
well, the objective
was
achieved.
One aspect of it. It is a Loser Lotto.
Yeah, I think you've put the technique out there.
Right, and so
if they haven't figured out by now what the technique is,
so we're
gonna
let that go. We'll just say good luck to all the Lotto players that are playing out there. If I gave you the numbers, it would still look like Lotto when you held it up to you. So
I thought you were quitting this thing.
I'm gonna quit it, but I think someone's gonna tell me it's gonna be a success, and then we'll have to change our whole system of this.
Might have to do that.
We'll have to change the letter and try to spell other letters like M's, which you can't spell with enough dots. So, all right. That's it for Loser Lotto.
That's it for Loser Lotto. We have I want to make one other little point here. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning. We made a Zoom episode as a test. There's no failure in science. It was not a great test, but I think we salvaged about 30 minutes from an hour and a half. It's going to be subpar audio quality, but
not easy for first-time Zoomers.
Not easy, especially when you're a geezer, a buck. So tell us what you think of that one. That'll be the episode that comes out after this one. And on that note, I will say, I'm Dave.
I'm Del.
And we are the Two Old Bucks.